everybody. It's the Spill the Wine Show podcast, episode number 4, and this is your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford. And, today we might say is the prequels podcast show. A little background on how all this came together over the last month and a half. We just want to get yourselves and myself introduced to each other. Peter Dills is a longtime friend of mine. He is the dining guru of Southern California. And just a little background, if you're a first time to joining in with us on the podcast, this will literally take you through some of the short versions, which led to the long versions, which we call the Spill the Wine podcast. So I myself have been involved in our Temecula wine industry for about 20 years and a good 10 years with Chapin Family Vineyards out by Lake Skinner, and probably one of the best wine grape farmers and winemakers I know in all of Southern California. I spent 15 years on and off on commercial radio with my own show called Wine Country Talk Radio. And over those years, you run in and become friends with other colleagues in the industry. And the dining guru of Southern California, Peter Dills, and I became industry colleagues and friends probably about 15 years ago. So anyways, I have at various times and seasons been his weekly wine commentator on and off. And we called the segment Before 6 because every Sunday we would follow Angels baseball at roughly 5 o'clock, and I was the last little segment right before 6. So on June 27th of this beautiful summer starting out for 2021, Peter pulled me back on board once again. And these next couple of segments we're going to represent to you in the podcast here are what kind of led, as I'd already mentioned, to the long form, now known as the Spill the Wine Show podcast. So it all restarted, as I'd mentioned, back on June 27th. Yes, in the studios in Anaheim, AM 830 KLAA. It's Angels Radio, and their baseball studio is right there in the stadium with all the other talk show hosts there. And Peter Dills is there every Sunday, and this is how my first jump back into the saddle with him sounded in the studio. Here we go. Hey, everybody, it's Leroy. It's time. Yeah, we call it Before 6 because guess what? It's a few minutes before that. Hey, before I talk wine, I do have to say, okay, Dodgers picked up Pujols, and guess what, Angel fans, you heard today, pinch hit a home run. And the other thing I have to say is being here at Anaheim Stadium one day called, when I was 1966 opening day, April, I was one of the Pipsqueak Boy Scouts on the field holding flags with the Marines. But I bleed blue after all that time in Anaheim. So anyways, I thought it would be fun. We're approaching the time of football, so I want to paint some word pictures. And, a lot of people, they wonder, what gives about grapes? Why do they grow in some places and not others? And one of the things happened. This morning in our Temecula Valley, I'm watching these little blobs. It looks like the old movie, The Blob. Little gray fingers climbing through several of the crevices in the mountains that come from the ocean. Okay, so what is it, the magic? But in general, if you think of a football field, all right, think of that soil. First of all, what's the makeup of the soil? In this case, then our football field, think of it as a growing season. And in Southern California, we go from March to almost November, one of the longest growing seasons around. So you can grow wine grapes almost in any place in the world. They will produce some kind of fruit. The question is, can you make decent wine from them? So most of the great places you find delicious wine grapes, there are going to be a lot of similarities. They're going to be close to a big body of water, the ocean, a lake, a big river, and they're going to be close to a source of warm, toasty air and a little drift back and forth. So when we look at an area, gosh, how do we decide that could be the place? Well, let's start with the soil. I'm going to use my stomping grounds, Temecula. We have decomposed granite, basically a bunch of sand pulverized from all those big granite boulders that everybody knows as the mountains here in Southern California. And then when you think of a football field, there's goalposts. So the growing season might be thought of as where the goalposts are. And in different areas around the world, those goalposts are a little further apart and they're a little closer together. But that may be something that's okay as far as how much time you have for farming the grapes. You need a little longer for some, a little less for others. But what about temperature in those kind of conditions? So usually maximum for good quality wine grapes, 90, 95 degrees. Much over 95 degrees, grapevines just wither, literally. And the cool part is you want something where you don't get freezing temperatures in either the early spring or late fall, because you may have damage to your vines. So we're going to look at a temperature swing ideally between, say, 90, 95 degrees and maybe 60 or 55 at night. And that dynamic range of temperatures is what really drives a lot of quality into the fruit. One last little note, that 30-degree temperature swing is also critical based on what we look at as the median temperature. So if you think about growing grapes in a given area, you're going to take and chart the weather as far as the daily temperatures, and then follow that. And when you get all of these different dimensions where they fit into something that looks good, guess what? The next one is you roll the dice, because you never know until you try it. There's over 50 different varieties of grapes grown in the Temecula Valley because people like to roll the dice. And these are just some of the basic things. I thought it'd be a way to give you a little picture. Okay, so remember, growing grapes is like a football field. You got the goalposts that are the season. You got the temperature range. You might think of it as the top of the goalpost, right?
There's blood and sweat and tears.
And there's a lot. If you don't have passion, you're in the wrong business in the wine biz, It's kind of like food, right, Peter?
Yes. Hey, I agree.
So those of you who are thinking about growing wine grapes, I have to tell you, there's a fun thing at Wilson Creek Winery every second Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the evening in their grand ballroom. You can be part of the Small Wine Growers Association. All you have to be is a wannabe to come and show up and learn about wine grape farming.
All right. That's it?
Cool. That's it.
Boy, you got it through.
I did
Bruce
it.
Cook's going to start on time now. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks, Adam Gertler,
Sure.
Leroy, everybody, Evelyn, Turtle. I told a joke, and I thought it was pretty good.
It was good.
We are on next week. The following week, we've got an Angel game that's going to go on at 4
We're being
o'clock.
preempted.
We're being preempted. But tune in next week. Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in. It's Peter Dills, AM 830, KLAA.
That was the intro back into radio with the dining guru Peter Dills. The following week was 4th of July, so I decided, I should call in and maybe keep the ball rolling since it's, after all, a baseball station. It was the 4th of July weekend, and we decided instead to keep the wine flowing, yes, with a celebration of wine grape farming in Southern California. 245 years of America and 245 years of wine grape farming in California.
All right. He's been sitting on the phone patiently, and he's a great friend of the show, and usually he's in here live with us. None other than the king of wine from Temecula, Mr. Leroy. Leroy, what's happening?
Hey, Peter. Well, happy Independence Day weekend to all our listeners and to the Angel fans out there.
We saved the best for last.
Yes, well, hey, and I need you to play referee because I think I got a little bit of a two-part segment. We'll pick up the last little bit next week. But I thought it'd be fun to talk about the history of wine grape farming in California, because the Declaration of Independence and the first wine grapes turned into wine in California have a very, very close relationship. So actually, everybody probably knows that growing up in California, his father, Junipero Sierra, was responsible for bringing the first of the Vinifera grapevine cuttings from Baja, California. And then he planted them in Mission San Diego in 1769. Though some say, I think it was San Juan Capistrano. Anyways, it's close enough. And since it takes several years for cuttings to bear enough fruit to successfully make juice for fermentation, it appears that California's wines may well date back to the nation's independence in 1776. Now, the planting of grapevines was such a common occurrence back in those days that lots of times they didn't even log it. It wasn't like something they did in their diary. And that would kind of show it lacked importance to them because it was just something they did. So Franciscan friars must be given recognition for California's initial winemakers. because they held that role exclusively for more than half a century, producing vintages for Father Sierra's chain of 21 missions up and down the El Camino Real, and I bet a number of folks have visited those missions over the years. The grapes were what we termed a mission variety, and they actually still used today. Even there's a small vineyard of them on the old Pachanga property in Temecula where they draw some fruit from those. And it was used mostly in sweet wines and ports because those oxidize much less fast and make a good wine for particularly using in sacramental purposes. And they were originally thought to be a variety that came out of Spain called the Monaco grape. And these Franciscan missions had vineyards and adjacent wineries all up and down the coast. And the Padres were advised by their superiors to limit their distribution and trade only to others in their order, because it wasn't before long that sales of wine and brandy to neighboring rancheros and itinerant traders began to materialize. So here's the fun and interesting thing. So kind of California jumping in right away before it was a state. Governor Diego Borica of California issued directives designed to restrict this trade and discourage the practice until when it was brought to his attention that the export of California wines could become advantageous to the young region's economy. So he withdrew his instructions and wine grape farming started to take off. Now, the two missions that most people are probably familiar with out of Los Angeles County are among the major California wine producers of the period, and they were the San Fernando Valley Mission and the San Gabriel Mission.
Oh.
And to this day, you can go visit them, and you can see all the original winemaking. And they had an annual yield of 400 barrels of wine and 200 barrels of brandy. Now, the point being here, as it starts to move into a little more secularization of the Franciscan missions around 1830, they started planting commercial vineyards. And most people may not know this, but downtown Los Angeles, where all those high-rises are, there used to be a lot of verdant vineyards. And it was soon obvious that Southern California soil and climate was just super perfect for the production of grapes. And here's another fun kind of situation is many people are familiar with Boyle Heights. So if you ever tootled down the 101 going to Dodger Stadium, Andrew Boyle in the late 1830s was one of the largest wine grape farming operations in downtown Los Angeles. So I just thought this would make a little fun adjunct to the fact that here we are on Independence Day celebrating 245 years of our country, and our wine industry in California really got off the ground just about the same time.
Wow, man, that is a great report, especially for 4th of July. It's always interesting to know where the grapes and vines were planted. And I know up where I live in Pasadena, Sierra Madre, Eagle Rock, Azusa, there were vines there back in the late 1800s as well.
Yeah, and actually where Santa Anita Racetrack, a place you're very familiar with, was one time location of Lucky Baldwin's 1,200-acre vineyards. And then in Anaheim's Disneyland, the location of in the 1870s of the principal California, they were one of the big wine districts, and unfortunately they had a disease that they used to call Anaheim's disease. It's since been researched and found out was Pearson's disease, which nearly destroyed our Temecula Valley in the late 1990s. And in 1884, the Anaheim area got so devastated with their German wine grape farmers that they abandoned the wine grape farming and planted orange trees. So we've got a lot of fun history in Southern California. Most people think they go up to Napa, Sonoma, and it's like, oh, that's where wine started. Nope, not at all. Not until really the late 1800s, early 1900s, when Southern California was particularly the Cucamonga Valley by that point in time. So those who don't know, kind of Alta Loma, Ontario, Gloucester, which is right there by the airport, were oceans of vineyards as far as the eye could see almost. And, of course, there's a whole host of people who out of that area had influence on our Temecula eventually becoming a wine grape farming region. And one of the fun things as well is there was a gentleman who actually around 1830, who spied out Temecula as a wine grape growing, and they didn't get it totally documented, but they say that he actually went and planted experimental vines, but because back then the roads of trucking grapes from Temecula to L.A. was not exactly like it is today. So it got abandoned for a while, but yeah, we've got some very, very serious wine grape farming history, and California owes a lot to Southern California for all of that starting to happen.
Well, that's why we love you, Leroy. You keep us updated on the wine industry, no matter where it's at. So we're going to see you next week in studio, I hope.
Well, we're working on that.
Right.
If not, we'll make sure that I'm there with. I had a little frosting to the cake on some of the notes I just made, but I have a fascinating guest coming up with a great story to tell about a cute little winery started in San Diego.
All right, we can't wait. That will be next. That will be next week, Leroy. Thanks for the phone call. We always look forward to your reports.
Yeah. Hey, have a great after the show dinner.
All right, that's Leroy calling in from Temecula.
Well, the following week, an Angel game went really, really long, and actually, I got preempted at the tail end, so we pushed out a special trusty little recording I did in a restaurant with an incredible rising star in the industry, a young man by the name of Justin Markowitz. And his little restaurant that he's overseeing in Pasadena is in the old railroad station, used to be called the Station of the Stars. Yes, all the Hollywood elites would like to run in and out of Los Angeles up there. He's going to tell the story, and we're going to talk about wine and food together. He was introduced to me by a longtime wine club member out at Chapin Family Vineyards. You know, this industry gives you the awesome fun to meet some of the most incredible rising stars, and in this case, Justin Markowitz got referenced by his dad, and it led to this fun little jaunt at the restaurant. Thank you, Peter Dills. Well, it is before 6 and time for Wine with your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford. Hey, quickly, for those of you who caught last week's commentary, I promised some frosting on the cake, and I wanted to definitely tell you there's so much more fascinating history of Southern California wine grape farming. And I want to pay tribute to the source that I was using last week, the witty, late author, educator, and award-winning home winemaker Vic Knight Jr. and his 1999 book, Toasting Temecula Wines. Vic was a dear friend and wrote about our Southern California wines from 1980 all the way to his passing in December of 2013 at age 85. Thank you, Vic, old buddy. Okay, today we find ourselves in Pasadena and in the historic Santa Fe train station with our guest, Justin Markowitz. Justin.
Thank you so much, Leroy, for having me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why I am here, because we're going to investigate your house brand wines, which is something I really believe many go into a restaurant and go, well, should I try the house brands? But let's talk about what you do here and the company you're with, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much again. So I'm the general manager here, and basically we have these three wines, our proprietary blends. We have a red blend, a Chardonnay, and a delicious rosé as well. And they're pretty much all very medium-bodied and very light enough to go with pretty much everything on our menu.
So let's talk about, on your menus, plural,
Yeah.
Let's talk about the three restaurants that are under this one umbrella, if you will.
Yeah, so we have the Otis Bar, which is the bar of the Grande Orange Cafe, which is our main dining room. And then we have the Luggage Room Pizzeria as well. And then in about a couple of weeks, we're actually opening up the Luggage Room Takeaway, which we'll be doing a ton of takeout pizza through as well.
And then the Grande Orange Cafe?
Yeah, Le Grande Orange Cafe, and we have tons of different variety of things on our menu, from burgers to tacos. And then, you know, farm to table is our name, and we really want to go for the freshest ingredients in California and get locally sourced as well.
So I want to, because I've known you for a while, and we worked together putting a wine in one of the other restaurants. So let's talk a little bit more about you. You're a handsome, young guy, at least compared to me. How'd you end up as general manager of this place and with the company you're with?
Yeah, so I started about 7 years ago with the company and hired as a server, and just really right from the beginning, I just loved everything about it and kind of grew with the company over the last 7 years to where I am today, and a lot of hard work paying off, and it's extremely exciting to be here and be a part of this amazing team that we have at Grande Orange Cafe.
So let's talk about your parent company and some of the other things that they have in the hospitality industry, because that's quite fascinating.
Yeah, so we're under LGO Hospitality. So we have several locations in Phoenix, Arizona, and Scottsdale. We have Buck and Ryder, Chelsea's Kitchen, Ingo's Tasty Food, La Grande Orange Grocery, and then we also have in California, we have this restaurant, and then we have the Misfit in Santa Monica, right on the 3rd Street Promenade, and then we have Ingo's Tasty Diner as well in Santa Monica, right on Wilshire.
So not many of you would be surprised if I happen to mention, because over the years, I also have the honor of being part of the team at Chapin Family Vineyards in Temecula, and I'm proud to say that the Alianico that we produce is in the Misfit, right?
Yeah, we added that to the menu at the Misfit a while back when I was actually bar managing over there, which was a lot of fun.
Okay, so let's talk now. Why is it that restaurants, and I mean, sometimes the answer seems obvious, but you go in and they're going to have, like you guys have here, their own proprietary blend, okay?
Yeah, we wanted to create something that kind of went with anything on our menu, from the rosé, which would pair well very nicely with our house-made ceviche, or our Chardonnay, which would go really well with our ahi tuna tacos, all the way to our red blend, which would really go well with any of our pizzas or even a filet mignon.
And I just find here, I was tasting through each of these, and your rosé is a rather interesting rosé. It's a lion's share of it's Malbec, and then Tempranillo, and the French grape Tannat. What a tasty, and it's a very light, folks, very light, kind of traditional European, but not that kind of dryness. Just a pinch enough there to give us some fruit and some tang, but not be a sweet wine. So it seems to me that would be a little more in line with going with a lot of the things on the menus, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we wanted it to be, the majority of people that would like to have a nice glass of wine or a bottle, and be able to have pretty much anything on our menu and drink their favorite wine, whether it be a Chardonnay, red blend, or a rosé.
Okay, and then next up, so folks around the world, the number one wine grape is Chardonnay. And if you go to a restaurant, they're going to have a red and they're going to have a white. Usually if that's a white, it will be Chardonnay, at least 90% of the time anyways. And they have a yummy Chardonnay here. And let's talk about the company that you guys have been working with that is making your proprietary bottlings here, okay?
Yeah, so we've partnered with Matchbook Wineries up in Dunnigan Hills, California, just up north, and they've really helped us kind of create these really fresh tasting wines to pair with everything that we offer.
So I'm going to jump to the red blend because this is a fascinating blend, and for the price, folks, the smoothness, the body, and the chew, if you will. So listen to this blend, okay? 62% Tempranillo, 29% Cabernet Sauvignon, 23% Grenache, 3% Tannat, and 3% Petit Verdot. Now, I don't know even in the Temecula Valley that I've even found as good a number of blends there. So, well, we're running down the tail end here, so real quick, talk about your location.
Yeah, so the Grande Orange Cafe, we're located at 260 South Raymond in beautiful Old Town Pasadena. You can park at the Metro Del Mar garage, the metro station here, or even take the Gold Line from downtown. You'll just wind right up at our back door. And just come on in. We're on a walk-in basis. You can even add your name through our Yelp wait list through the Yelp page.
Justin, thank you so much for being a part of Before 6. When we talk about wine in the afternoon, evening, right before 6. That's why we call it that. It's Leroy Wine Guy Guilford with you, and Peter, it's back to you. One of my favorite passions is discovering new wine operations and getting a chance to share their story. Now, as you just heard, that was one, that little restaurant doing some fun things. But the next one, by keeping my ear to the groundswell, you hear about new operations. And in this case, it happened to be right in the mid of summertime as I became introduced to William Christopher, the award-winning, rodeo cowboy turned winemaker. Yeah, and it took 2 Before 6 segments to get his story. Thank you, Peter Dills. Hi, everybody. It's Before 6, and that means it's time for wine with your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford. Hey, we find ourselves today in South Riverside County, about 10 miles southeast of the Temecula Valley, near a little town some of you have heard of, Awanga, at a brand new boutique winery called William Christopher Cellars. And we're here live actually in the winery cellar with Chris, the owner, winemaker, and if I may say so, quintessential gentleman and a bit of a character too. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thank you.
Well, I want to find out, okay, I always love whenever there's a new operation in town, what their wines are like. But before we get there, let's talk about you. How did this lovely operation here out in this beautiful valley get started? What caused you to go, man, I think I'll jump into the wine industry?
Well, I started at a younger age, and then it grew. And then the more restaurants I went to, the more wineries I went to, I said, you know what? I can outdo these guys. They're doing so much wine that they're not managing it.
Now, you were telling me a little bit, let's talk about this beautiful piece of property out here. So we're off Highway 79 south a bit, as I'd mentioned, to the east of Temecula. What's the history back here where your property is?
Well, the history of the property was always ranched. It was the first ranch that brought longhorn cattle from Texas. And then from there, it went to Herefords, Angus, growing, food for livestock.
Right. And you said farming as well, correct?
Yes, correct, yes.
So now that is like, you said this has been in the family for generations.
Generations, yes. And there's history here because the first stage stop, Butterfield stage stop, is still standing on the property with the National Monument.
And now that's history. So now Chris is going to work on adding a new page to history with his wines. So we were talking a little bit, just a bit before we started recording, that the area that you have right now is also a big organic farm. Is that right?
Big organic,
garlic farm?
Yes.
And what brought you about as far as that element of what you're doing here?
Well, organics are important, and garlic is it's a spice that has many uses, medical uses, great for food, and it's a healer in a lot of ways. It's a good thing for the human body.
So wine, to a degree, is a healer for some of us that know the good special properties within red wine. So you were telling me, as we were reviewing some of this, about the history of the property here. So it was way back in 1996 that you decided that you were going to begin making wine, right? And like myself, we're not exactly spring chickens, right? So,
right, correct.
Yes. And then you said in 2014, that's when you decided to go commercial. So that's the operation that we're at right now, correct?
Correct, yes. Started to make wines first because I wanted to open with award-winning wines instead of wait, before we were established. I wanted to open the door with a bang, with award-winning wines from international competitions.
And I have, by the way, folks, tasted. We're sipping on one of the advantages of getting to interview a winemaker is sip his wines at the same time. We're drinking a 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon that is both Northern California and Southern California fruit. And I have to tell you, I am quite impressed with this Cabernet. So we're right here looking at the tanks behind us and the fermenting operation. Tell me a little bit about that. You were talking about the big barrel oak tanks that you have. Give the background on that.
Okay, the French oak fermentation tanks I got off Robert Mondavi's son, David, because it's kind of old school, but the best red winemakers in the world use these tanks. They're more expensive than stainless tanks, but the oak, right? You want the oak in there, especially deep red wines.
Right. Now, and then, of course, that doesn't take away the fact that you're also going to do oak barrel aging, right?
Of course.
So, okay. And on your reds right now, what kind of time frame are you typically, approaching what you're doing as far as barrel aging? How long?
I'm sorry.
How long is your time frame that you usually keep your red wines in the barrel?
Close to 3 years.
Oh, that explains a lot on that round smoothness that I get in this wine.
Yeah,
so,
most people are doing them at 2 years and then sticking them in the bottle. We give a little more attention to them and what the key is that people don't know, but under the microscope, the molecules are separated because you're pushing wine all over the cellar it's going, and then you're racking barrels, and you don't want to upset the wine as much, so then you have to wait for the molecules to come back together.
So I'm going to tell you right now, that's why you guys, you come out here and taste these wines, you're going to be really, really surprised. So we're going to do this because there's a lot to explore with you. This is going to be part one, and next week we're going to talk a little bit more. But right now, why don't you give us the hours and your location here in the South Riverside County? So.
Okay, we're in Awanga. The address is 44375 Highway 79 South.
And you take a little journey back into the property here.
It's about
got an S turned up the hill there.
It's
right?
almost a mile from the highway because the winery is back up against the mountain. We border the Cleveland National Forest, and we have some of the most outrageous sunsets that you've ever seen.
And you have to come to one of their Saturday night concerts they do every other week, because that's when you get to hear the music and watch the sunset. So, all righty, Peter, we're going to send it back to you because we're going to pick this up again next week. Well, we had so much fun. He goes by Chris, by the way, William Christopher and myself. And his wines were so good, I had to insist the following week. And yes, we didn't just sit and do a part two. I went back out there a week following and took my wife with me. And we drank some incredible wine and heard the rest of his story. Now, I do have some good news because, that was my trusty little cell phone digital recorder. Not exactly the best for on the road. And the good news is, yes, I have a brand new professional recording setup to take on the road now. So any of those extraneous sounds in the background, we'll get around those because the guy who put together Monarch Studio here has also put together my on-the-road system. Part number 2 aired once again with Peter Dills before 6, and it sounded like this. Thank you, Peter Dills. Hi, everybody. Hey, it's before 6, and it's time for wine. Yeah, with your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford. And, we're back this week in part 2 of the rodeo champion cowboy turned award-winning winemaker. Yeah, we're in South Riverside County, about 10 miles east of Temecula in the Awanga Valley. Yeah, it's Highway 79 South, and we are in the cellars of William, yes, quote-unquote, Christopher, with the gentleman who says it all by this, a mixture of passion, art, and science. Chris, welcome again to Before 6.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, now you said I leave a whole bunch of stuff out, so bring it on. You're an artist and a musician and a winemaker.
Yes, and everyone lived their own way, took their own path in life. I didn't want the corporate world. I love the earth, And I love people, and I love fine food. And I decided that, hey, wine's the deal, man.
Okay, but let's back up because you were an award-winning rodeo cowboy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've won some championships, but those days are over. I'm 65 years old now. But yes, I did that. I was a professional surfer. I was a contractor and built custom homes. I've done quite a few things in my life.
Let's talk about, you also had a band for many years, toured Europe and so on. Talk about your music background.
Yes, I had a band called West Sail. We toured Europe for almost 17 years. We had a great following over there, mostly universities and nightclubs. And it was a blast, but it wasn't fun living out of a suitcase.
Yes, so it's got its limitation. All right, let's talk about your artisan aspect, because I'm looking around here. Folks, he has a complete full-on lab in his little winery here, and I'm looking at a painting you did. Talk about your artisan background there.
Well, when I shut the band down, I've been doing art since I was a kid. When I was young, I was a cartoon artist. And I copied things that were on TV, and then I made up cartoons.
Right.
And then I decided that, I started doing portraits and landscapes. And then I got bored. I said, this isn't art. And I met a man named William de Kooning, who's a very famous man. I met Jacob Lawrence, who's a very famous man, the most famous black artist in America. Mm-hmm. And I became friends with them, and they told me, don't stop what you're doing. I said, I can't do this anymore. And William de Kooning told me, if there's no risk, there's no art.
Oh, now that makes sense. That's like winemaking for sure.
Yeah, you have to have the huevos to,
yes, for sure.
to go ahead and not go by the book. Yeah, if you're going to be somebody or make something different than anybody else, you have to challenge yourself and challenge against the book, right? And right, because no risk, no art.
Okay, so speaking of art, we're going to talk about the art of winemaking once again. And folks, I'm just a quick review. I know some of you didn't get to hear last week, but he decided in 1996 he was going to learn to start making wine, and he was a former beer maker just out of the fun of it. He went commercial here in 2014. He decided to make a number of wines first and then enter them in various international competitions. And now he has literally launched himself out of the chute just in the last few months with a lot of awards to show for it. And we're actually been sipping on some 2017 and some 2014 bottlings here, or I should say vintages. I want to talk just for briefly. Tell me a little bit about this. We're drinking this blend, what you call Smooth Operator. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That's got some yummy stuff in it.
Yeah, I decided to make a challenge and to take a Cab Franc and take a Cab Sauv and a Petit Verdot, all right? And it took me about a week in the laboratory with tastings to figure out what the percentages were.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And most people don't do those blends, right? And it took me about that long to figure out that, yes, you can do this. You can go against the book.
Yes. Now, let me interject here, because up in the Duluth Hills, which are on the west side of our Temecula Valley, you're growing Pinot Noir, Cab Franc, and Cabernet, but you have lots of connections with long-established vineyards to the north of us. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I have friends that not necessarily own wineries, but they've been winemakers for famous wineries up in Napa Valley, Anderson Valley, Alexander Valley, and Lodi, and all that. And they knew that I had the passion for this, and they took me into their club, and they have been showing me for years. I've learned so much from them. They've shared their opinions, their secrets, and I've gathered them.
And I'm going to jump in there because we're running out of time here, folks. I just want to say, if you caught last week and this week, so keep in mind, we're a little over 10 miles east of Temecula, located at 44375 Highway 79 South, and he's about a mile back to the south of the highway when you come in. You got to go up around the hill. So correct me if I'm not on the right here, but you're 11 to 6 on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, with the exception of every other week. You do live concerts out here, right?
Starting
on Saturdays.
On the 28th of August, and the address is 44375 Highway 79 South, Awanga, California, 92536.
All right, there you have it, folks. Peter, we're going to send it back to you because you've got to come out and try these incredible wines. Thank you, everybody. So now at this juncture in the summer, the Spill the Wine Show podcast was born. You know, interestingly, initially an idea presented to me several years ago by my longtime Wine Country Talk Radio voiceover announcer friend, Rod Eisenbeis. Yet brought together here by Monarch Recording Studio founder, recordist, and producer Roland Guilford. Roland had not been aware of the longtime encouragement of the man known as Mr. Golden Honey Voice, Rod Eisenbeis. So the next 3 Before 6 segments with Rafael Navarro and his Brunello-style Sangiovese, with Steve Guilford and wallet-friendly fine wines, and the amazing Dale Pearson, a Pearson Brothers winery with groundbreaking wine made from honey, it was the short versions of the full podcast that ended up on the Before 6 segment. That's why we're jumping past to tell you this last Before 6 segment aired just this past week. Finishes, you might say, the rest of the story with a special announcement.
All right, Leroy. Leroy, don't spurt out an answer. You're calling to tell us about your Spill the Wine podcast. So don't throw out, don't say, unless you say grape, which 4 other people have said
or
grape.
Cranberry.
Yeah, cranberries. It's not cranberries, it's not grape.
Am I allowed to?
No,
Am
you're
I
not.
allowed to say a potential?
No, because Turtle already said that anybody, actually any affiliation with any radio station, you're not allowed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, I just real quick, you were talking about the Blue Water Grill, and I have to tell you, in Temecula, they also have a location, and this is for wine lovers because they offer free corkage fee for the first wine bottle you bring along. Isn't that cool?
Well, then,
and I got to give a shout out to Jaime. He's one of the managers in the Temecula store. He's a great guy there. Anyways, I am Leroy Guilford, as all you know, and I have been with Peter for some time on and off talking about wines. And now I have the Spill the Wine podcast, and we're putting a little more focus there because, as my promo says, we cover every dimension of the wine industry, with especially an emphasis on fun and the stories. And that's the kind of thing I like to explore. And here's the other big announcement. This is fun.
Wait a minute, drum roll. Do we have a drum roll? Hold on, Leroy. That was the drum roll. Okay, go ahead.
There you go. So, anyways, my very first guest, Rafael Navarro, and I want people to go to Spill the Wine the Spill the Wine Show podcast. If you actually say it to Google like that, the Spill the Wine Show podcast, we pop up on top of all the platforms there. Anyways, Rafael Navarro is fronting his brand new little operation called Navarro Family Vineyards, and he makes Brunello-style Sangiovese from here in Southern California. Incredible creation he's doing, and he is going to be my new sponsor.
All right.
So,
well, congrats.
He would have been on the air with us, but he's a traveling guy, and we couldn't quite work it out so he could be on the phone at the same time. So, anyways, I'm still going to be doing the Peter Dills version of now what will be called Spill the Wine instead of Before 6, because as you and I know, like today, it's not typically before 6 a lot.
It's hopefully before 6. But we thought the game would...
The Spill the Wine Peter Dills version will be on your show. Okay?
Yeah, at 3 o'clock they were in the 7th inning, and I'm like, oh, man, we're going to start early today. No.
Well, I have to tell you, it worked well because some of the folks who've listened for years know I am also part of Chip and Family Vineyards out in the Temecula Valley. Out here by Lake Skinner watching a gorgeous sunset. I'm actually sitting on the patio sipping wine on the veranda of Chip and Family Vineyards waiting to call in. So it's not a bad life.
All right, that's Leroy. And make sure you listen to his podcast, and we'll be talking about that more in the next few weeks. All right, Leroy, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Enjoy Temecula, all right?
Well, there you have it. That's kind of just a little wrap-up of how we got in the studio here to do the long versions of visits with people at every level of the wine industry. I just want to say I really much appreciate those of you who've decided to become followers and listeners. We're going to continue to search out some of the best guests and information about wine. And I have to tell you, I do have an archive of some incredible interviews of my former radio show. And occasionally we're going to dig in those archives because I have some pretty phenomenal names of years past that are still relative to listen to. So as the years unfold here, we will continue to present some choice extra things, all righty? Well, that's the Spill the Wine Show podcast. Thank you, everybody.